Chers collègues, la conférence sur l'avenir de l'Europe qui s'est clôturée il y a quelques semaines devait contribuer à combler le fossé entre l'Union et les citoyens, quelle que soit leur région, leur ville ou localité d'origine. Ensuite de la conclusion de cette conférence, j'ai souhaité inviter à cette réunion Madame Karolina Zubel et Monsieur Bazyli, Klakla, qui ont co-rédigé pour la Commission de la citoyenneté, de la gouvernance et des affaires institutionnelles et extérieures du Comité européen des régions un rapport sur la dimension territoriale de la conférence sur l'avenir de l'Europe et ses suites. Je les invite donc à présenter leurs conclusions sur cette dimension territoriale, notamment en termes d'approfondissement de l'intégration politique et sur les suites à donner aux propositions de la conférence sur l'avenir de l'Europe. Et je leur donne la parole.
Thank you so much, sir. I will try to share my screen right away. All right, I hope it works. Good morning, everyone. My name is Karolina Zubel, and together with my colleague Bazyli Klakla, we would like to present you some, of course, of the conclusions and recommendations that evolved from our study called the Territorial Dimension of the Conference on the Future of Europe and its Follow-ups, that we've had a chance to prepare for the Committee of the Region, and I think it was finalized last week for good, because it's been published on the website. We both represent CASE, which stands for Center for Social and Economic Research, and one of the three authors, who is Agnieszka Kolesa, is unfortunately not with us today, but if you have any questions, of course, we will be happy to answer right after the presentation. So what were the key objectives of the study? Obviously, as you can see from the title, we are very much focused on strengthening the role of local and regional authorities in the European democracy and functioning of the European Union. Hence, the Committee of the Region showed us the three principles, the three key objectives that they had initially for their role in the conference that we should consider when looking at the crazy amount of inputs that the conference overall evolved with. So we were looking at all those ideas that somehow show the promotion of the role of European representative democracy at the very local level. We were also looking at those ideas that promote multi-level governance in the EU. And we were also looking at ideas, or actually rather concrete recommendations, that address the territorial dimension of the European policies, but in a way that answers those three objectives on the idea of strengthening the role of local and regional authorities and European democracy. So our approach was actually threefold. We've started with conducting a literature review. You can see this as an annex to our study. We, of course, mapped and analyzed all the resources available on the conference website. That was a huge amount of information. And finally, we, of course, analyzed the proposals adopted, which included around 49 proposals and 328 concrete measures across 9 themes. But those, of course, are based on all 178 recommendations from the European citizen panels, and especially, to our surprise, 1,600 ideas recorded on the platform itself. So we are very much targeting the voices of the citizens that took their time to somehow come up with ideas, concrete recommendations, to put them on the platform. Of course, we are also interested in what came up from the national citizen panels with regards to European democracy and institutional issues. And all this together came up as a report which has been divided in 4 thematic groupings. Those were initially slightly different, but as long as as the conference evolved, we were trying to answer those groupings in the same way as they are answered in the final report of the conference, and hence we might tell you about four main thematic groupings. This is citizens' information, participation, and youth. And here, actually, I would say that the largest number of inputs was presented. All these ideas very much cover anything spanning from youth engagement in the democratic process to information points across all cities and regions in the EU, showcasing what the EU actually does. The second core theme is democracy and elections. As you can imagine, it's been all about the European Parliament elections, fostering transnational debate on European issues, and all the issues that somehow are related to the democratic process. As for the third issue, EU decision-making process, we were mainly looking at the ideas on how the EU could become more accessible when it comes to guaranteeing a transparent and understandable process for the citizens. And last but not least, subsidiarity, of course. This is something that did not, for some reason, evolve from the citizen panels or from the platform, but we were actually observing also the European Democracy Working Group during the conference, and this is the topic that was very heavily mentioned over there. So those four thematic groupings are very much in line with all the ideas that popped out during our research. Now I give the floor to Jan Bazyli. Bazyli, I don't think we can hear you.
Now?
Yes, it works now.
So thank you very much. I would like to talk a little bit about the necessary legal changes that are required for those propositions that we analyzed to come into life. We did analyze all those propositions considering the necessary treaty changes, as these are the most difficult ones. Here you have a table that presents the overview of our analysis. Due to the lack of time, I will not go into details on each of the proposition. I think that you can find all of this in our report, and I encourage you to look there. But as you can see here, most of the proposition does not require major treaty change. In fact, most of them sits on the edge, kind of, between the no treaty change at all and minor treaty change. Next slide, please, Karolina. Thank you. So, in fact, our conclusions begin with stating that most of the proposals can be achieved in a variety of ways, and this ranges from the use of soft law, lobbying, political influence, to, of course, far-reaching treaty changes. But this also means that each scenario, each proposition should be carefully evaluated in terms of its costs and potential benefits before it's implemented. This is because some ideas that seem like they may need some treaty change can be actually introducing without this difficult to implement change in the treaties. And on the other hand, some other propositions, mostly those that are centered around creating some new EU institutions or EU bodies that would foster the citizens' participation in the legislative process, for example, they might be, of course, implemented without any treaty change, but then at the same time, they may actually benefit from being anchored in the treaties that would rise their level, their visibility, rise their profile. So This is the important thing to note. Next slide, please. And then the EU treaties can be actually seen from two different perspectives while looking at their role at implementing those citizens' proposals. First, of course, they can be seen as some kind of an obstacle in this current wording, something that needs to be changed in order to for these ideas to come to life. And in our analysis, we pointed out the articles that are the articles that we pointed out the most to be changed in order for those ideas to come to life are articles regarding Committee of Regions, obviously, and strengthening the role of Committee of Regions. Then this is an Article 17 TEU on the European Commission, Article 5 on subsidiarity. But on the other hand, there is potential in the treaties. The existing provisions of the treaties can serve as a basis for such changes and can provide the legal basis, the justification. And in this context, it is very important to remember about the Article 10 and 11, so the representative democracy, and also the Article 15 of TFEU that concerns transparency and access to information. And making good use of those provisions may be actually crucial for the success of the proposals. Next slide, please. While we were focusing mostly on the necessary legal changes, what we actually noticed that many of those propositions are actually, they are calling not as much for a change in the law, but the changes in practice of applying the law. And I don't think that this is something that I need to remind you, but it is an important one, statement that I would like to put forward here. The one is not always related to the other. So even the best regulations can be inappropriately put into practice. And then there is an existing legal framework that can actually, in the spirit of citizens' proposals, be put to a better use than has been so far. Next. And this is the last one from me. It is also visible in the proposals that most of them focus on a very grassroots level, which is actually closer to the citizens themselves than to their local and regional authorities. And it is possible then that only this entirely grassroots action, which will be afterwards supported and institutionalized somehow by the local and regional authorities, national authorities, EU bodies, only this kind of a bottom-up movement will be recognized by citizens as a real change for democratization. If we would like to shift the focus of this initiative to put the ELRAs in the center, for example, this should be approached with caution, as it can be interpreted by citizens as misappropriation of the original intent. Thank you, and I give the floor back to Karolina.
Thank you so much, Jan Bazyli. You've obviously heard a lot of conclusions and to some extent also recommendations from Jan Bazyli, so I don't want to repeat on that. But there are two things that we believe are quite crucial as a very overall conclusion to mention. In general, we do have the impression, and this is something we've all agreed on, that all the proposals with concrete numbers of corresponding measures are very much coherent with one another. They really identify the priorities of citizens that should quickly be analyzed and developed further. But like Bazyli said, their success or their failure will depend on how and when they will be translated into concrete proposals. And this is especially relevant for local regional authorities, because if we see lack of interest from the national or EU authorities, we can also go along with act of local laws, and this is one of the main conclusions. Our analysis also showed that democracy is the key topic that was of interest for all the citizens that put their contributions, especially on the platform website. What surprised us a bit is that it was not so obvious when it comes to European citizen panels. They obviously, to some extent, mentioned European democracy, but not as much as we would envisage. And last but not least, what also surprised us a bit is the fact that European democracy, especially at this very grassroots local level, was of interest only for a couple of member states looking at the national reports, meaning Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, France, and Italy. Of course, this might result from the fact that those countries made the biggest steps in terms of involving a number of citizens in their national citizen panels, but still, this is something perhaps we should look at. As for the recommendations, well, I'm not going to lie, these are all very relevant for local regional authorities, for the Committee of the Regions and CALRI as well. And we would like to perhaps highlight 4 points that we've analyzed in our report. This is to strengthen the role of local and regional authorities as intermediaries between citizen voices at local and regional level on the one hand, and the national and European levels on the other. We've clearly seen that there's lack of this middleman, to put it this way. Local and regional authorities should also take active part in defining and operationalizing the idea of active subsidiarity. But of course, it will change from one member state to another situation. We of course recommend also some concrete measures to address the territorial dimension of the European policies in order to achieve the EU's overall cohesion objectives. This is something we've discussed during the previous presentation. And last but not least, the local and regional authorities should continue its attempts to strengthen its consultative role in the EU decision-making process. This is something we clearly see as one of those gaps that our citizens mentioned. But again, like I said, these are only a couple of points that we've covered in our report. So if you have a time and you're interested in the topic, we of course very much invite you to have a look at it. And thank you so much. That's all from our side.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Zubel et Monsieur Klakla. Je me tourne maintenant vers l'Assemblée pour voir s'il y a des demandes d'intervention. Oui, je vous donne la parole.
Thank you. I take it in Swedish, if it's okay. När man ser på demokratin så upplever jag representerar Åland, ett parlament i republiken Finland. Och problemet som är där, som jag vill höra också med andra i KALRE, är att vi har en lagstiftningsbehörighet inom många områden. Och när vi stiftar lagar eller ger utlåtande till EU så beaktar EU bara en åsikt från varje stat. Fast vi har behörighet. Och det här är någonting som måste rättas till nu i det framtida Europa. Förtroendet för europeiska parlamentet och kommissionen minskar när man inte bryr sig om de små regionerna. Och här är det också ett risk med demokratiskt underskott om vi ser på väljarna som går till val till EU-parlamentet. I många stater så är det under 40%, medan vi i lokala valen har 70-80 och upp till 90%. Så det här bör nu, när man diskuterar framtiden för EU så måste vi stärka det, men vi måste också bry oss om de lokala regionerna och parlamenten. För det är här som vi är starka. Många medborgare upplever att på Åland till exempel så har många jordbrukare slutat. För det är så mycket regler, så mycket byråkrati. Vi är en arkipelag med 6 500 öar. Vi har mycket fiskevatten runt. Vi har haft mycket fiske. Men idag har vi bara 5 yrkesfiskare på hela år. På grund av reglerna från EU. Och det här ger inget förtroende för EU regionalt sett. Och det är det här som vi måste jobba för, och vi ska stärka Europa så måste man också komma ner och inte förstöra för lokalbefolkningen. Tack.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Agblom. Je ne sais pas si d'autres souhaitent intervenir. Si ce n'est pas le cas, je vous rends la parole, Madame Zubel et Monsieur... Oui, ah pardon, Monsieur Moreira Catala, je vous donne la parole.
No, simplemente para agradecer el trabajo de los dos profesores, de la señora Zubel y el señor Bazyli, y hay muchas recomendaciones y muchas propuestas que vienen del debate que he tenido sobre el futuro de la Europa, y lo leeremos con mucho interés, con mucha atención, porque es un trabajo serio sobre uno de los puntos que a nosotros nos interesa mucho, que es la cuestión de la subsidiariedad y el multinivel. O sea, cuáles decisiones de la Unión se pueden y se deben tomar en los ámbitos regionales de la Unión Europea. Hay muchas propuestas y, por tanto, felicitar de este trabajo que hemos conocido ahora, pero que es denso y muy interesante en los temas que desde la CALRE hemos analizado durante mucho tiempo. Por tanto, agradecer el trabajo, lo leeremos e intentaremos implicar a nuestras autoridades regionales en la concreción de estas medidas que se proponen aquí.
Nous avons une demande d'un de nos membres qui veut le faire à distance, le président Borghetti, et je lui donne la parole.
Presidente, se posso, grazie. Grazie per il lavoro, Roberto Ciambetti, Presidente del Consiglio regionale del Veneto e anche membro del Comitato delle Regioni. Interessante lo studio che è appena stato presentato da Case. Mi permetto una cosa, io sono stato membro della conferenza sul futuro per l'Europa e la mia esperienza in questo ambito, vi assicuro, non è stata delle più entusiasmanti. Io ho svolto parecchi incarichi istituzionali, ma una situazione come quella che ho visto all'interno della conferenza sul futuro per l'Europa, vi assicuro, l'ho vista poche volte. Una mancanza di organizzazione. Noi praticamente siamo stati insediati nel giugno del 2021, fino a dicembre-gennaio 2021 non ci siamo mai praticamente riuniti in maniera operativa, e poi in poco tempo abbiamo dovuto appunto lavorare in maniera scomposta e scordinata. Lo studio fa riferimento ai panel dei cittadini. I panel dei cittadini si sono chiusi il 21 febbraio del 2022. Purtroppo il mondo, l'Europa è cambiata dopo il 24 febbraio, dopo l'intervento appunto russo in Ucraina, e durante i lavori delle settimane successive questa cosa non è stata colta, quindi ci siamo fossilizzati su dei panel che erano, permettetemi, prima della guerra, e quindi non rappresentavano quello che stava avvenendo. Come realtà regionali, io ero uno dei 18 membri rappresentanti il Comitato delle Regioni, nelle centinaia di persone che facevano parte della conferenza sul futuro per l'Europa. Io faccio parte del gruppo lavoro salute, e quando noi come regioni, i parlamenti nazionali o i parlamentari europei ponevano dei temi diciamo di dubbio su quello che arrivava dai panel dei cittadini, il Presidente della Commissione ha fatto prevalere quello che arrivava dai panel dei cittadini. Quindi non c'è stata neanche una modalità di lavoro, mi permetto di dire, prendete il termine con le dovute cautele, democratica, cioè chi rappresentava i cittadini a vari livelli nelle istituzioni contava meno di appunto dei panel che non si capiva bene da dove arrivavano. E soprattutto, ed è questo che mi ha fatto anche così piacere vedere nello studio appena fatto, lo sforzo di dare una voce e di dare anche un percorso delle istituzioni regionali, delle autonomie locali nel processo decisionale europeo. Se guardiamo a quello che abbiamo potuto fare nella conferenza sul futuro per l'Europa, la nostra voce non è stata ascoltata nella dovuta maniera. Appunto, tempi stretti, lavoro compresso in poche settimane e anche questa deadline, questa chiusura che doveva per forza avvenire durante il semestre di presidenza francese. Io sinceramente mi auguro che la conferenza sul futuro per l'Europa possa avere un futuro, possa svilupparsi in maniera più lineare e in maniera, mi permetto di dire, anche più democratica, perché non c'è stato consentito di intervenire come autonomie locali nel processo appunto anche della formazione del parere finale, non c'è stato permesso di farlo in maniera importante. Quindi anche, e permettetemi l'ultimo appunto e poi mi taccio, i panel dei cittadini hanno coinvolto circa 50.000 cittadini col sito appunto messo a disposizione, un po' pochi rispetto alle centinaia di milioni di abitanti dell'Unione Europea. E soprattutto chi rappresentava i cittadini nella conferenza, dicono scelti casualmente, avevano invece un orientamento piuttosto marcato. Quello che abbiamo sentito dal nostro collega rappresentante della Finlandia, ad esempio, dai panel dei cittadini non è mai stato detto da nessuno. E invece i problemi che hanno i cittadini è quello di riuscire a sentire un'Europa più vicina, un'Europa più semplice anche nell'approccio, e solo ascoltando le autonomie locali e in particolare le assemblee legislative regionali, forse l'Europa potrebbe veramente avere il polso di quello che sentono i cittadini. Grazie Presidente per il tempo.
Notre collègue Luis Garcia a demandé la parole, je la lui donne.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente. Bom dia a todos, colegas. Peço a palavra para, neste momento da nossa reunião, agradecer a apresentação deste trabalho, em primeiro lugar. Em segundo, dizer que fomos uns dos adeptos e participámos e saudámos muito esta conferência sobre o futuro da Europa, e é com alguma preocupação que neste momento ouvimos, por exemplo, há pouco o Sr. Presidente do Comitê das Regiões referir algumas reações não muito abonatórias sobre a implementação das conclusões desta conferência. E, na nossa opinião, esta conferência sobre o futuro da Europa tem de ter consequências, temos que agir em conformidade. Não podemos perguntar aos cidadãos aquilo que eles pretendem das instituições e do projeto europeu e depois não implementar, pelo menos algumas das conclusões que saíram dessa consulta que fizemos aos nossos cidadãos. Porque isso seria, creio eu, um desacreditar das instituições europeias e acentuar o divórcio que sentimos, desde logo também no nosso país e na nossa região, acentuar o divórcio, dizia, entre o projeto europeu e os cidadãos. E, portanto, fiquei preocupado com estes receios sobre, designadamente, o Conselho Europeu, sobre a implementação de algumas das conclusões sobre a Conferência sobre o Futuro da Europa. E uma dessas conclusões, designadamente a questão da democracia participativa, passa, na nossa opinião, desde logo pelo reforço das regiões e do papel das regiões e das cidades na construção do futuro da Europa. E disso não tínhamos dúvidas e, portanto, essa é um pouco a nossa responsabilidade de todos nós, de garantir que estas conclusões desta conferência sejam de facto ouvidas, tenham consequência e sejam postas em prática. Pela nossa parte, nós vamos continuar, apesar de findo esta conferência sobre o futuro da Europa, vamos continuar a desenvolver este processo de aproximação aos cidadãos e às instituições europeias. Desde logo, e posso-vos dar nota disso, no próximo mês de julho faremos uma conferência sobre o futuro da política de coesão nos Açores, na Ilha das Flores, no ponto mais ocidental da Europa, em que teremos a presença da senhora comissária para as políticas de coesão, para discutirmos exatamente o futuro da política de coesão como um fator estruturante para as nossas regiões e para as nossas cidades. E, portanto, era este o apelo que vos queria deixar ao Sr. Presidente, desde logo, mas também a todos os colegas, para que tenhamos esta responsabilidade e este desafio de não deixar que as conclusões sobre a Conferência sobre o Futuro da Europa fiquem no papel, mas que sim que sejam implementadas a favor de uma construção de uma Europa mais democrática e mais participativa. Muito obrigado.
Merci pour votre intervention. Je rends la parole à Madame Zubel et à Monsieur Klakla pour avoir leur réaction sur les différentes remarques qui viennent d'être formulées.
Thank you so much, sir. Perhaps I will start and then give the floor back to Bazyli. Just a short clarification. Indeed, we are well aware that European citizen panels are not covered by our study, but this is somehow mitigated by the fact that we took under consideration all the inputs on the website, on the platform website, until 9th of May. So basically everything has been covered when it comes to inputs that were present on the platform itself. I know it might not be enough, but like you said, we do believe that the follow-up of the conference is equally important, if not more important than the conference, the whole process that took part within last year. And what we also do believe is that the political deepening, that the integration that we are talking about is somehow being stopped by those 13 member states and some of the parties that I don't want to mention. But the reluctance, of course, is one thing, but we still believe that there's a lot that can be done at the very local level. And this is why we actually encourage you to have a look at the recommendations, because we do believe that there are some things that can be done at the very local level. Bazyli, I'm not sure if you want to add something.
Yes, if I may, I would like to add two things. First, I would like to refer to the comment made by the representative from Finland, as it mentioned a very important issue, which is trust to the European Union, which I believe underlined a lot of those propositions. A lot of them aimed actually to build this trust, whether it was there were propositions concerning the more participatory engagement of citizens, or the propositions that were concerned with the education and sharing the common European values. They were all talking about trust, and this is something important to keep in mind while trying to put those ideas into life. And as for the other comments, I would only like to support the voices of the other commentaries and Karolina, that despite some obstacles, organizational and political and others, the conference did manage to produce very interesting ideas. And despite the fact that the world indeed changed since the end of the conference, those ideas are still relevant. But this is now up to the authorities to put those ideas into life. And I believe that all the authorities, no matter which level the authorities we are talking about, can have their own role to play in this regard. So, thank you very much for those comments.
Merci Madame Zubel et Monsieur Klakla pour vos interventions. Je tiens à indiquer que je serai attentif aux remarques qui ont été faites de manière à les relayer vers les autres institutions européennes et que cette conférence ne reste pas lettre morte. Je crois que vous avez insisté sur la subsidiarité, sur le fait que les petites régions doivent être traitées sur un pied d'égalité avec les grandes, et je crois que ce sont des éléments qui sont dans l'ADN de la Calré, et donc je ne manquerai pas de les relayer à nouveau.